Let's tell the truth! Let's tell the truth!
Well, I'll try to.
Yay!
And it's not NIMBY for me, because I live over here. It's really, it's everybody's backyard, really. All of the natural world is. That's what we seem to fail to appreciate. So, I'll try not to repeat too much of what Bill said. Just a few points. The biodiversity crisis is real. The climate crisis is real, very real. The housing crisis is also real. But we do not need to pit housing against biodiversity and climate. There's one very simple principle to be applied to housing in Nova Scotia, and that's simply that we do not develop on sites with a high degree of ecological integrity when alternative, already degraded sites are available. But that's what's happening at the Southdale Future Growth Node Eisner wetland site, because there's lots of that degraded land nearby.
Lots and lots.
And as Bill said, the plan is to cut down approximately 45 acres of near pristine forest on the sloping uplands to provide housing for 1,200 or more residential units while retaining 10 to 12 hectares of really pristine wetland as, quote, an amenity. Not for climate, not for biodiversity, but as an amenity for the community. And 10% of the upland is parkland of some sort. Who knows, it might be grass. It is shocking to me that in this day and age, no consideration has been given to the loss of carbon storage from loss of the forest and the forest soil. There has been no consideration given to the inevitable negative effects of destroying the forest and replacing it with hardscape on the wetlands at the bottom of the forested slopes. I mean, that's just unthinkable. It is simply assumed that the wetland remain as it is for, quote, an amenity. I can say, based on scientific observations of such processes elsewhere and my own observations on this particular site, that it's very, very likely that the wetland will degrade species-wise, and also that it will transform from carbon sequestering and storing system to one that emits greenhouse gases, not just carbon, but methane and lots of other things, nitrogen oxides. So why have these considerations been neglected? That's what really bothers me as a scientist. And really, that's a question for HRM to answer, the Housing Task Force to answer, the Shaw Group in Clayton to answer, Englobe Engineering Consultants to answer, and I'm sorry to say, also for Ducks Unlimited to answer. On August 24th, I wrote a detailed 33-page analysis and commentary on the landscape suitability analysis for the project prepared for Shaw Clayton by Englobe Consulting Engineers, which identify serious issues with this analysis. For example, it didn't even acknowledge that the wetland is what we call a fen. There's different types of wetland, and it's important. It's very important. You know, if it's a bog is like independent. It's not dependent on the surroundings, really. But a fen is very dependent on the surroundings because there's a flow of water through it. They don't acknowledge that in their landscape suitability. The most fundamental characteristic.
Shame!
So very concerning to me is that the landscape suitability analysis does not cite the significant wetland properties of the areas identified in the Ducks Unlimited West report, which Bill has commented on, which is dated June 29, 2020, well before this whole landscape suitability analysis was prepared. Why not? Very concerning to me is that the landscape suitability analysis is dated October 2021, yet it was not made available as a component of the documents to be considered when Regional Council voted to move ahead with this project on January 11th, 2022. It wasn't there. It was done, but it wasn't there.
Convenient.
In fact, it seems it was never It was never made formally available to regional council. And one councillor I spoke to was otherwise very knowledgeable about this issue, said he wasn't even aware of it up until fairly recently. Now, not that it would have made a huge difference. The landscape suitability analysis is a very flawed report. But if it had been looked at critically, I believe that it would have been rejected by staff and certainly questioned by councillors. It could have stopped this process. So there's still time, as Bill has commented, to save much of the uplands, that the project can be stopped soon. And there would still be little time lost by moving to another already ecologically degraded site. We'd lose very little time. But that's what should happen. Regardless, we must document the entire process and ultimately hold those who made the critical decisions responsible. We owe that. We owe that to the planet, to the community, and to each and every one of us. And that's why we're here today. And I thank you for doing that. Thank you.